Well, here we go. Well, hello, friends. This is Dave, broadcasting from the Dave Cave for the second
fantastical
episode of the Davecast. Wow, baby. Holy picnic sandwiches on a Sunday afternoon. It has been far too long since we've chatted. Thanks for coming back. Thank me for coming back. It's been a very interesting period between the first episode and this, the second.
You can say that again.
It's been
Oh, wow,
a
you're
very
actually repeating it.
interesting period between the first episode and this, the second.
Really, Dave?
Bebe.
So after launching episode 1, I felt this awesome rush of excitement. It was almost like a manic state. And I say that within the bipolar realm that I do inhabit, where it's just like, I'm invincible! And that's how I felt. I was like, okay, this is going to be amazing. I get to express myself. Everybody's going to be on board with this.
I
And
liked
it
it.
just was pretty exciting. But then the familiar 1-2 punch of a couple of old friends came back.
Hello, depression and anxiety.
Yeah. So vulnerability has this way of opening the floodgates of emotion for me. And honestly, this iteration of that got really dark. And I haven't felt that level of down for probably over a year. And so it was a little bit disappointing. But in the middle of all that, I came across a post from a family member that said something like, the opposite of depression is creativity. And I thought that was an interesting contrast that I'd never thought about in that way. So I decided to create this raw cover of A Long December by Counting Crows.
Oh, I love that
because it
band.
was the end of December and it had been a long December and it had been a long year. And in a lot of ways, it's been a long life. So it wasn't planned or polished. I just grabbed a guitar. I barely knew how to play it. I hit record and just let the emotions flow. So I'm going to play you a super short snippet of the audio, but I invite you to go to the Davecast YouTube channel to watch the whole video and hear the entire song. I'd love to hear what you thought in the comments, and please subscribe. Trying to build up all of the subscription bases, and I'm really grateful for everyone who has followed my work on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, subscribe to the YouTube channel and the podcast. Seriously, you guys, it means so much to me. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Love
man.
you.
All right, you all, here's our sad duet from Bebe and yours truly.
If you think that I could be forgiven, man, I really wish you would.
Na 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 yeah.
No auto-tune here, baby.
Yeah, this was not about perfection, not even close to it. Just me, a green screen, and my feelings. And it helped. Creativity got some positive energy moving in me again, and for a moment, it just flipped on a light switch from the dark to the light. So, as mentioned before, that cover is up on the Davecast YouTube channel, and I'd love for you to go check it out. It's pretty rough, but it's real, and it represents something important to me in choosing to create instead of letting the dark win. And so here I am moving forward, imperfectly, but as honestly as I can. I'm not here to pretend like, I'm living some life of perfection or I have some magic life hacks that are going to make your life stress-free. No, that's not really how I roll. What I would want to do is encourage you to continue to move forward despite the challenges that make us human, and to learn from those experiences and use it for good. And that's why I'm here. And thank you for also being here and for showing up every day despite the hard things in life. Because you are awesome. Okay, so today I want to talk about puzzles. I'm going to use puzzles as a metaphor for teaching about several different things. And it's a bit of a mixed metaphor. And if you push it too far, like all metaphors, it will break down. And I happen to be a too far pusher kind of guy. So
That's
thank you for
true.
your patience as I try to get the most out of this idea. So I want to talk about it in 3 different parts. First, talking about framing and the power of frames to help us to focus in on what our values are and how to set goals within a value system that drives our life forward into things that we want to do and become. Second, I want to talk about individual pieces within the puzzle and the importance of each individual piece, specifically you and what you bring to the world with your unique awesomeness. And number 3, I want to talk about connectors and the importance of individuals who are able to first hold space for pieces of the puzzle that don't seem to initially fit, and then creatively look at differing pieces to find those connecting points and to break down walls and to build bridges in ways that help us to see the whole picture of humanity, realizing the importance of every piece of the puzzle, even if we or they do not see it initially. But because I respect your time and I get tired of hearing my own voice sometimes, I've decided to cover each of those sections as individual podcast episodes. And so, without further ado,
Wait, I have a question.
yeah, what's up, Betty?
What exactly is a do, and how do we know if we're doing a do enough to say that we're not going to do it further?
I honestly have no idea. Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
Thanks, Nini.
good answer.
All right, let's start.
Puzzle frames.
All right, you guys, I got to start with a confession. I really don't like puzzles.
Come on,
In
Dave.
fact, strongly. I know. I might have lost a few listeners with that confession. They're just a struggle for my brain. I look at all the pieces and I just have sensory overload. It's like I can't make sense of it all. But I want to hang out with my kids and my wife because they love puzzles. And so I try to play the game. And I know this is like puzzle 101, simple, duh, whatever for most of you. But when they taught me about creating the frame of the puzzle first, I'm like, okay, this is starting to at least give me a chance to organize and make sense of everything that's in the middle. Okay. It's like dad can at least find the straight edges and look at the box and try to figure this out. And so we always start with the frame. And obviously, as you create the frame, then you kind of get a sense of where things go and you can order pieces in different areas and start to build off of those. And it just makes it a little bit easier. So today I want to talk about frames in not just the puzzle sense, but in the way that it can help us to focus in our goals and our thoughts in productive ways. Because it's January, people, and you know what that means.
Gym owners are about to get really rich again.
Absolutely. So as you are setting goals for the new year, I think frames are really important to focus those goals into a context of values. Frames are very powerful. I think the first time that I really realized this was as a graduate student at Brigham Young University. I was invited to be a part of a committee that was creating an exhibit celebrating the 400th anniversary of the original publication of the first book of Don Quixote in 1605. And we were getting these imprints from New York, but we didn't know which images they were going to send to us. And to my surprise, the experienced curators at the museum weren't worried at all. And they explained to me that in the presentation of what they were doing and the purposes that they had, the frames were actually more important than the images. And they could create a story and a narrative and an experience based upon the frames without regard to which images came to us. And at first I thought, that's ridiculous.
Say what?
You know, like, of course the images are the important part. The frames, that's just what holds it up on the wall. But the more I thought about it over the years and the more experiences that I had with frames, both literal and figurative, I realized how wise those experienced curators really were. Frames are very powerful. They can impact the way that we experience the world, the way that we interpret ourselves, the way that we view anything. Sometimes I do an activity with my students where they write different labels on pairs of glasses, and I invite them to look at specific scenarios from the perspective of each of those vision frames. And then I'll say, look at it in a comical way. Look at it in a tragic way. Look at it in an angry way. Look at it in a benevolent way or an empathetic way. The exact same thing. And they tell completely different stories. What is more important then, the image or the frame? If we can change the framing of our thinking, if we can change the narrative of how we tell our story and how we see others, everything changes. From a cultural studies perspective, and that's what I've studied as a professor over the last 20 years,
Dave's
I
old.
can't overemphasize the power of frames in our lives. They kind of run the world in a lot of ways, and they can be super helpful tools to focus in our values and help us to take our life and push it forward in ways that are meaningful to us personally. But frames, from my view, have also been the root cause of some of the most horrific events in human history. Sometimes global, sometimes neighbor to neighbor. And part of it's not really our fault. Our brains are set up to create generalizations.
If it were not so, we would go loco in the coco.
If we were to consciously process all of the stimuli around us, we couldn't handle it. I think we would actually die. We would not be able to make sense of everything that's touching us, everything we see, everything we feel. And so the brain's amazing where it can take to the subconscious most of that and then pick up on patterns and create generalizations in order to promote practical living and survival. It's like, these things hurt us. These things help us. This is what we do every day. This is how we put on our socks.
That one's
Right?
important.
And we get into these patterns, and those create frames of reference. The issue with that is then those frames sometimes can become generalizations, that become stereotypes, that become hatred, that become at times very ugly moments in our lives and in our history. I think we do this the most with what we don't understand.
Stranger
Our
danger.
brain loves certainty. We would rather have bad news than to not understand something and not know what's happening. That's where anxiety creeps into our mind. And when we have that, it's like the unknown and the new and the different becomes a fight or flight moment where we run away from it or we attack it. We alienate it or we ridicule it. In any case, what we don't understand, we often will place within a frame box to say they are the other. They are this not good, bad, unknown thing that is causing all of this harm and hatred in the world. And many news media outlets and advertising agencies rely on this because division is very profitable, thus making it quite hard to escape because it's plugged into our heads almost 24/7. When in reality, I think if we were to challenge our own frames and invite others into that dialogue, we would find more connecting points than frame walls around
Let's
us.
just
But
talk.
because we crave safety and certainty, we create those generalizations to keep people distant and to keep ourselves safe. At least we think so. When we can get to the point where a different frame of reference becomes an opportunity and not a threat, that's when humanity starts to make progress and we join into the more global frame of simply being that human and find the connection points that make us one. But it's really hard to do. We use frames for protection of ourselves. And so we're like, you can't touch me because I'm within this box, right? We do this with identity markers. It's a really challenging thing because it does create a space of safety to say, I am this thing. Whether it be in terms of politics or religion or sexuality or whatever it is, that creates a safe space. But the issue with that, I think, as far as cultural studies is concerned and identity markers, is that we become then bound by that box because our frames serve us much better as flexible tools than as controlling masters.
Oh, I like that.
When the frame is boxing us in, then it's time to reconsider, I think. Or if the frame is keeping somebody out, it's time to get brave and start to look at people as people, not as generalized stereotypes. When the frame helps you to focus in your attention and core values, where you firmly believe what your experiences have taught you, and yet you hold loosely that frame in order to be humble enough to refocus the frame, maybe even deconstruct the frame entirely at times, as we have paradigm shifts, as we have new light and knowledge, as we interact with other frames and realize maybe we don't know everything. When I'm teaching my cultural studies class, I always start out by saying, hi, My name is Dave,
Dave.
and I recognize that I don't know everything about anything and that I'm wrong in some way in everything that I think and believe because I don't have a complete understanding of anything. We would have to know everything about everything in order to know everything about anything.
Deep thoughts.
In other words, it's all interconnected. And so to recognize the frameworks of how our mind works, that we create generalizations in order to just make sense of the world, then we can understand that that is just a constructed frame. And we can start to use that to focus in our thoughts and our goals and our actions in ways that match with our values. But we don't have to hold on to it so tightly that we use it as a cage for ourselves or a bully stick to hit others over the head with.
Ow.
Again, frames are super powerful.
Beware of the frame.
I'm not sure that we need to be afraid of it, but I think that understanding how frames are constructed and how they can be deconstructed is important for continuous self-evaluation. Okay, enough theory. Let's talk practical application right now. So as you're setting goals for the new year, here's a challenge for you. Create a frame of reference that includes your core values. This way, the goals that you're setting will be based in what is most important to you and not just, like random goals like, oh, I should be doing this.
Beware of should.
Or goals that start with this huge burst and then go
Fizzle, fizzle.
It's Hickles
And I think one of the main reasons for that is because it's not attached to a central why. It's not core to who we are. It's not framed by the values that define who we are. And I think that's one of the main reasons why we give up on our goals is because our internal self in our brain that has processed everything and subconsciously knows who we are and what we need is like saying,
Hey, buddy, this isn't actually good for us.
and I think we lose motivation because our brain rejects it, to be honest. I think that's part of why we have burnout, because we don't have this core drive from our authentic self that pushes us forward through the hard times. So instead of setting goals, my invitation to you and the challenge for all of us, I think, throughout our lives is to first create the frame before we start building the puzzle. If we start to make goals just kind of willy-nilly, like this sounds like a good idea, you might get something out of it. You probably will. I think all experience can lead to learning and growth and positive insights. But if we really want to get the most out of our goals and project forward in authentic ways that's true to who we are, then I think that requires some framework on the framework.
I see what you did there, Dave.
And it requires some deep introspection to think about, okay, what truly does matter to me? And are my goals matching with that framework? Once again, frames can change. It's not like you're locking yourself into something, but to the best of your ability, if you can create a perspective based upon personal value, then that can help to choose goals that are going to move your life forward in ways that you want. So I like to phrase those in terms of positive affirmations, even if I'm not there yet. I generally state them first person in the present tense as if they have actually already happened, because that is who I want to be. And at core, that feels good inside of me. I think you feel that when it's like, this is a core value, this is important to me, it kind of resonates within you. So when I say something like, I am an attentive father, that's something that's really important to me. And I have 5 or 6 other affirmation statements that I've made this year that are my frame. And so the goals need to fit within that for me. I don't know, maybe try that on, experiment a little bit with it, get curious, and just see how that works for you as you're setting goals and see if those goals stick with you a little bit more as you're creating a value system around that and repeating those affirmations daily. I am a healthy person. I am a dedicated employee. I am true to myself and my inner voice. Whatever it is that those affirmations are, that frame then can help guide what's inside.
Ooh, cool catchphrase.
And in a general sense, it can help us to see ourselves and others in ways that are more aligned with our core values and how we want to show up in the world. Because just like my museum experience where we didn't know which images were going to come to us, we can't fully dictate or choose the events and experiences in our lives, but we do have the power to choose our frames. And as a wise curator taught me, that might ultimately be what matters most. Thank you again so much for joining us today.
Bebe.
I've got a frame of gratitude, and you are dead center in the middle of it.
That's right.
Can't wait to talk to you again for the next episode of The Datecast.
Love you guys.